Kojima once said, "Games replicate reality." He never actually said that quote comes straight from me, but it still applies to most games. Game creators incorporate their own experiences in the games they make. Some use games as an outlet to process real grief or to maybe share a critique of something happening in the real world. While especially these two themes are prevalent in a ton of media, one topic or a system that constantly gets used or brought up is economics. More specifically, economic forms. I genuinely can't think of many games that don't have some sort of system in place for trading or producing goods. Hell, even LEGO Star Wars taught me as a kid that I can trade studs for humans. Economic forms are so ingrained in gaming that it shows many facets throughout genres. For example, the traditional economy, that in its purest form is, at least gameplay-wise, pretty hard to find. The first traditional economies date back to ancient times, where the means of production and distribution were mostly influenced by cultural norms and traditions. The community has predetermined jobs that are passed down in the family. So if your dad's a hunter, I'm sorry Timmy, you will never experience the hard labor required to be a Twitch streamer. Some other factors that determine your position could be age or gender. That isn't to say that gender roles can be generalized for every ancient tribe there is, as some only assigned women to be gatherers, while in other tribes women fished, hunted, or even exposed the lies of the government. Wake up people, wake up! To name Far Cry Primal as a good example for this economic form is kind of like cheating, since it is exactly depicting these before mentioned ancient tribes that operate this way. Tight-knit communities of nomadic people that use their surroundings to survive in a harsh environment. Since the tribes are not chasing profit, they only produce what they need, a so-called subsistence economy. No profit in its traditional sense also means the absence of currency, which creates a dilemma in itself. How do I get a thing that I do not own but someone else does?
Come on, the gypsy wants to barter, let's barter with him.
A system that one can find in a ton of games. This war of mine depicts a normal day in Bosnia. The fictional city of Pogoran is closely based on Sarajevo, during the siege of Sarajevo in the 90s. You're constantly confronted with a never-ending cycle of danger. During the day, snipers have a clear view of the city, ready to unload a bullet into anybody outside, making the nighttime the only period where you can really scavenge for resources. This does not guarantee that a trip into the city will be safe, as other survivors are also scavenging to support themselves or their loved ones. Besides the possibility of death outside of your fort, people can also try to break into your house, meaning that you need even more resources to fortify your position. To more easily get these resources, you can barter with NPCs. Some are guaranteed to spawn in certain locations, while others can be randomly encountered, like Franco, that sometimes stands in front of your door at 10 AM. This system is based on preferences, which makes certain trades more desirable than others. So one trader might give up more materials for medicine, while another might prefer food. This also means that an abundance of a resource does not create a big demand for it, which makes trading with it harder. The fluctuating demand forces you to adapt to the needs of the other survivors to get your preferred outcome, which is more indicative of an economic form we'll discuss later. One problem with the bartering system is the conversion to value, as without currency you can't get a one-to-one value transition, since it's more based on subjective perception. Pathologic 2 adds another facet to bartering: trust. In traditional economies, trust is mostly established through face-to-face interactions. The close-knit communities are, after all, dependent on the good faith of the other people around them. Your actions in Pathologic 2 influence the willingness of the inhabitants to trade with you. With a few exceptions, like kids always being available to trade with, this can lead to whole areas being really unfavorable towards you. This is also just another example of pure bartering. Games that really encapsulate traditional economies are multiplayer survival games. Just think about it. In most survival games, you're placed in a situation that resembles the life of ancient human civilizations. It literally says in the title of the genre, survival games. At its core, we have a small community of individuals using the resources of their surroundings to survive. We all know the beginnings of a Minecraft server that you will shut down in 2 weeks tops anyway. One person will search for sheep, so you can craft some beds. Another person will cut down trees for sticks and maybe some firewood if the person in the mines doesn't find enough coal. And then there's also someone raiding homes of innocent people. While per se there is no division of labor based on tradition, the tasks are tailored to the interests and enjoyment of the community members. There also isn't any inherent reason to hoard a huge number of materials, since you can just, for example, go to the mine, find some iron, make the armor that is needed, and just live with it. I based this example on Minecraft, but you can apply it to any run-of-the-mill survival game that comes out every 2 days. One aspect I didn't touch upon is the fact that traditional economies are mostly the basis of all other economic forms. It can either naturally develop to, let's say, a market or command economy, or be forcefully exterminated through the existence of a more technologically advanced economy. Narratively, Red Dead Redemption 1 hints at what such an erasure could look like. If you didn't know, Red Dead 1 is set in the year 1911. We play as John Marston, an outlaw that is forced to work with the government as they have taken his family hostage until he eliminates some of his former colleagues. We experience the latter end of the commonly known Wild West era that started around the 1850s. During the prior years, a ton of European settlers from the east migrated to the west due to the discovery of Californian gold and the creation of an extensive railroad system that was faster and safer than the Oregon Trail. This new inflow of settlers meant that the government required more space for them to settle in. This led to the displacement and genocide of many Native Americans. The character Nastas grew up on a reservation, land that is semi-owned and regulated by Native Americans and the government. He works as an informant for the Bureau of Federal Investigations and is thereby involved in both sides of the conflict. During the mission At Home with Dutch, he mentions one of the ways a traditional economy can be stunted and how it actually was stunted by the American government. The destruction of natural resources, more specifically, the bison.
Look, Mr. Marston! Buffalo! What a noble beast!
I see him. The white man will soon be the end of them.
What on earth are you talking about, Nastas?
Too much hunting, sir.
Your whole society is based around hunting.
But we hunt to eat, not for sport. Soon there will be no buffalo left.
Who teaches you this nonsense? Extinction is a myth refuted by Darwin.
Since Native Americans live in a subsistence economy, as we mentioned before, they only take from nature what they need. The bison, or buffalo, a staple food source for the Native American tribes, was systematically hunted for sport and got its natural habitat destroyed through settlers. With a major source of food eviscerated, the Native Americans were either starving or dependent on American food. If we consider that the development from one economy into another wasn't forceful but natural, we see the diverging paths of an economic form. One of these paths is the command economy, an economic form that gives the means of production to the government, which in turn makes plans, decides wages, and sets prices. Through their sheer control, the government can force their vision of a perfect state, while in most cases not being obstructed by control mechanisms like the separation of power. So if you ever played a RTS, you're communist scum. I'm of course joking. Or am I? You see, in most city builders or RTS games, you are the one controlling the production plans, like many other command economies do. Consumers, or the inhabitants of your city, army, or whatever you have on the in-game map, don't really have a say in your planning. You decide who does what, when and where to ensure you create a product that is in your eyes needed for society. In a way, when you were 12, you were subconsciously using a command economy to train barbarians in Clash of Clans. But it's more complicated than this. The earlier communist joke where I displayed you as Soyjack while I am the Chad better knowing video creator doesn't really work. The biggest reason is that communism doesn't really exist in RTS games, since they have currency like gold to produce products or units. A true communist RTS or city builder would mean that you don't even exist. Communism seeks to create a society with no classes, government, or currency. So the existence of an authority, like the player, is inherently paradoxical. It's a bit confusing and people mix this up constantly, so follow me closely. When most people think of communism, they think of Leninism. Leninism is a more authoritarian form of socialism. Marx and Engels, the forefathers of communism, used communism and socialism as synonyms in their works, so they can be used interchangeably. Lenin, on the other hand, interpreted socialism as a sort of transitional period between capitalism and communism. In his vision of socialism, the working party acts as a dictator, suppressing capitalist revolution and setting up a command economy that seizes private property and minimizes inequality. This sounds quite ideal. Everybody is equal, everyone's needs are being met, and everybody's happy. But it wouldn't be a system without any flaws, the biggest one being inefficiency. Without any form of free market, it's harder to gather information about the demand for stuff in society. A real-life example of this would be the DDR in Germany when it transitioned into a free market because it just couldn't be competitive with the other companies that were already going through all these market mechanisms that made them the top dog in most cases in the market. The argument that there is no incentive for working also exists. If there's no profit to be made, why would you specialize extra hard in this field that is needed? Or at least that's how our capitalist trained brains think. Some games replicate these socialist or communist ideals, such as Don't Starve, cause they don't have any food. The Tropico series puts you in the role of El Presidente, the leader of a banana republic. These are small countries which economies mostly depend on the export of a specific limited product, like bananas. One mission in Tropico 6 forces you to become a full communist state by taxing the rich, dismantling religious institutions, and providing equal resources to the entire population. One edict is called Free Wheels, giving the inhabitants state-supported vehicles, which are totally safe. This playstyle of course amuses the communist faction, while angering the capitalists that will try to crash your economy in retaliation. But it isn't all sunshine and rainbows with the communists either, since they will push for a more authoritarian country that resembles a surveillance state. Moreover, your economy will already be struggling enough with no money-making buildings being allowed and a huge toll on the expansive social services. But there aren't just socialist command economies. One of the most prevalent command economies throughout history is the war economy. Governments seize the means of production to prioritize the military's needs. They assign jobs, control wages, and even nationalize whole industries for more efficient planning. Whenever there is an all-out war in video games where victory is required for the nation's existence, it's most likely a war economy powering the troops. If you ever spawned as any soldier in Battlefield 5, you were fully supplied by the war economy in your home country. Depending on the soldier you spawned as, I'm not sure if that's such a good thing. When we go back to the diverging evolution paths of the traditional economy, we can explore the second option, market economies. It's based on the simple principle of supply and demand. If someone wants something, you produce it, they buy it, you get money, and you reinvest. In a way, a ton of video games are based on market economies, since it's the economic form most people in the world live in. It's a simple transaction of currency for a good made by a private business. It's the most prevalent system in video games since it's easy to tie progression to it. You go and do some physical labor, you get some money, and then you have a new item in your inventory. You going into the store in Kokiri Forest and buying some nuts with rupees indirectly boosts the Hyrule GDP. The above-mentioned freedom allows for self-expression and the creation of businesses which are mostly owned by private individuals or groups. But this freedom also means that volatility isn't unusual. There is no central organization setting up stuff like prices, wages, or jobs like in a command economy, possibly leading to income inequality. One key factor of a market economy is fair competition, since by theory, competitive markets operate the best when companies are in constant battle with each other, innovating their products, and with that, providing the consumer with the best possible results. If there is no competition, but complete dominance in a market, monopolies or oligopolies are possible. A market situation where one or more companies control the supply of products, creating a predatory environment where prices can be set strategically to maximize profit. If there is no government intervention with laws or organizations like the FTC, but more so support for these unfair monopolies, a corporatocracy can be created. Cyberpunk 2077 is in a way a case study of why we deserve broken games, judging by the popularity shift in recent years, but also a great example of a corporatocracy in effect. After the Second World War, the Arasaka Corporation flourished by predicting several economic crashes and creating security, manufacturing, and banking divisions. Slowly they became a megacorp, fighting wars, bribing politicians, and doing assassinations. Fast forwarding to 2077, they were forced to be reckoned with, as they use their monetary power to influence politics and find ways to control the population. And in a way, that's the name of the game for any company in Night City. Money is power. Everything is monetized, even your body. You yourself are a product of capitalism. Your body enhancements are there to provide value for possible customers, be it a security contractor or a brothel. Life or death is decided by the healthcare package you bought for an unreal price. The air you're breathing is so polluted that you need to buy fresh air in plastic bags. Well, that was depressing, and not at all part of our reality. Mechanically, there's one cool market economy part that I encountered twice already in my life as a capital G gamer: stock markets. A rather complex topic with many moving parts that could lead to confusion. But at the base level, it's a system of people selling and buying shares of a company. You can profit from it and the company gets some funding. But like any system, it can be abused. In this case, by knowing the My finance professor said that his profession would be useless if everybody always knew what was going to happen, and that's right. The market relies on every available piece of information being factored into the price of everything, making everyone an equal player, which we aren't in GTA 5. So if you magically pump all your cash in the pharmaceutical company and then whoopsie whoopsie kill the president of the rivaling company, well, you just made some nice dough. Or if you do a heist at a jewelry store and then buy the crashed stock. Same thing in Cruelty Squad. It operates in a similar vein, using mission objectives as a trigger for changes in the stock market. And there's phishing. The USA is a prime example of government officials abusing their power to capitalize on quasi-inside trading as they decide what laws get passed. There are also free market economies in MMOs. EVE Online is a notorious example of an extensive economic system where people need to put in effort of a second job just to be somehow good at it. There are galaxies with their own factions that act as states. People can join to support these states and benefit from stuff like social security in a fucking video game. It goes further than this. The devs release a monthly economic report that shows the GDP of regions and their trade deficit. And it isn't the only one. WoW or Final Fantasy XIV also have trade markets that allow for natural price creations with the idea of supply and demand. But what can we learn from all these critiques and portrayals? We went through subjective and idealized media forged by their creators. It's a fictional sandbox that pushes a narrative, a product of a person's conviction. So is a traditional economy bad? Is it inefficient? Is a command economy inefficient? Should we be more efficient but more risky with a free market society? Well, in a way you could answer all these questions with yes or no, but that doesn't change the fact that our whole global economy is controlled by one singular person.